Hello and welcome to another HanDrinksSolo Wine info video, and today we are talking about Thelema Riesling 2018. In this video I want to accomplish three things. One, I want to talk a little bit about Théleme estate and touch on its history. Two, I want to talk about what you can expect to taste and smell in the glass. And three, if you want to go a little bit deeper, I'm going to talk about the chemical TDN, or 1,1,6-trimethyl-1,2-dihydroxynaphthalene. So your first question, which you ask silently in your mind, is a good one. What is a Théleme? Well, as it turns out, it is a fictional utopian monastery or abbey dreamt up in the mind of a 16th century Catholic monk called Francois Rabelais in his manuscript, The Life of Gargantua and Pantagruel. In this imaginary monastery, shock and horror, men and women lived side by side, and instead of asceticism, there was luxury. Rather than countless rules for holy living, there was but one rule, which was, do what thou wilt. Now at this point, you can be forgiven for thinking that what Francois had in fact imagined was probably just a beach cabana at spring break, except he put it in the Loire rather than in Cancun. Now, traveling forward to modern day, Thelema Estate in Stellenbosch has the full name of Théleme Mountain Vineyards. And as the name suggests, this little piece of land is stunningly perched up at around 400 meters above sea level in the Helshoogte region in Stellenbosch, against the flanks of the Simonsberg. This sheltered little nook is arguably one of the most picturesque and dramatic settings in all of the Cape Winelands, and is home to some really rather famous Stellenbosch names like Rustenburg, Tokara, and of course Théleme. Now all of these states are clustered along the flanks of the Simonsberg. Théleme, alongside Tokara, is situated particularly close to the mountain, which gives it its own unique little misty microclimate. But while the estate is undeniably idyllic, and sitting in the tasting room really does feel like you're in a dream sequence mashup between the Shire from Lord of the Rings and an Avatar forest scene, at some point one needs to stop talking about the scenery and taste the wine in the glass. When we give this guy a sniff, on the one side you've got zingy pineapple and lemon blossom and peach fruit and citrus zest. Then on the flip side, you got a smoky kerosene and honey and beeswax thing going on, which is really quite prominent. When we look at the bottle and see that this is a 2018 vintage and realize that this is 5 years from harvest, then the two-sided nature of the aroma begins to make a little more sense. We know from some of the other videos where we've talked about Riesling that those aromas of lemon blossom and jasmine and peach fruit and pineapple could have been there from day one, as they're all properties of the grape themselves. But then that kerosene note, triggered by the chemical 1,1,6-trimethyl-1,2-hydroxynaphthalene, is something that can only be developed over time. Now, going to the trouble of actually telling you the name of that ridiculously unwieldy chemical is usually the sort of intellectual wankery that I try to avoid. But I did promise you that I'd tell you more later on, and so I thought I'd just get you warmed up by exposing you to its full force early on. The next thing I detected, or rather didn't detect, is the presence of any oak on this wine. There was no cinnamon or caramel or vanilla or nutmeg. And this is because this wine was tank fermented and then tank matured before it went straight into bottle to be bottle matured. So there is no oak anywhere in this process, which means that any smoky notes that you pick up are not the result of oak, but are rather triggered by that chemical trimethyl dihydroxynaphthalene, or TDN. So let's take a sip and see what it has to offer. Well, I mean, that really is pure pop blockbuster all over the place. When people say that Riesling is a niche cultivar and won't catch on in South Africa, really, I want to pour them a glass like this and ask them what's not to like. I mean, on the palate, there's this rich variety of fruit expression that ranges from zingy pineapple through to sweet peach fruit, and then it segues into a lovely, lingering sort of lime cordial finish. It's absolutely smashable. And then for those of you who are like, well,
you're wrong, this is all
kind of just too perfect for me.
I don't trust it. I'm more into rock and roll.
Well, that's just the thing, because then you have the flip side, which is the kerosene and the beeswax and the kind of wild honey worked in with the fresher fruit elements. It's these elements that allow the wine to maintain a sense of gravitas while still being universally accessible, and as you sip on it, it allows you to maintain your sense of mystique as well. Now, this is undeniably a warmer expression of Riesling. The fruit is ripe and generous, and some purists might insist on eye-watering acidity, but This is just such a great example of how a cultivar like Riesling that is viewed at the highest of heights amongst wine critics can also present something that is enormously accessible. The travesty in all this is that the vineyards were ripped up and Cabernet Franc were planted in their place. So Théleme no longer has these Riesling vines. The good news is that there is still one more vintage waiting to be released. So the Théleme 2019 Riesling will be the last one released by the estate. But I guess on the upside, there's some pretty exciting Cabernet Franc vines waiting to mature. So if you just wanted flavor notes, and that's all I have for you. But if you want to dig a little deeper, I'm going to tell you a little bit about TDN, or trimethyl dihydroxynaphthalene. As I said earlier, TDN is the compound that we are in fact smelling when we detect a note like kerosene on a wine. Others might refer to it as petroleum or even tar in some instances. This all makes sense because the base molecule, naphthalene, is in fact derived from tar or from petroleum. Naphthalene is in turn used to produce things like mothballs or pesticides. But before you freak out about mothballs and pesticides and ask, how can we drink this poison in our Riesling? You should know that it's also found in things like camphor tree bark. And camphor trees are natural. In fact, you could even find it in an organic camphor tree. How's that for a mind bend? So that's all we have time for today. But if you enjoyed this video, I would recommend subscribing to the HanDrinksSolo YouTube channel so that you can keep up to date with the 6 videos that we publish every month where we talk about wine science and viticulture and unusual winemaking practices, as well as some of the exciting South African winemakers coming out of the Cape Wine.